Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 344 of CryptoBiography, and I'm calling this one Internal Tattoos. And I did not get the writing done for tomorrow, but we are still going to work on that, and I should be back to it the normal story. It'll be part 16 of tomorrow. But anyway, so I need to explain what's going on, and that'll kind of lead us into what I actually want to talk about this week. So, I had my second colonoscopy this week, and it was originally, I had it a year and a half ago, was my first one. I actually did an episode about that one as well. I had some pretty big polyps on that one. They were all got removed at the time without an issue, but a couple of them were pretty big. They were over 2 centimeters, and I think one was 3 centimeters. And so I had to have another one in roughly a year. Well, a year came, and I was kind of led to believe that the same clinic was going to get a hold of me and set it up, but that didn't happen. So when I went into my doctor sometime around August, and mentioned this to him, he managed, to get he had his office contact that clinic, and then they did get a hold of me. And of course, they're busy a couple months ahead of time. This is pretty common, especially post-COVID, but I think just in general, this is kind of how it happens. And so it was going to be in November. Well, in November, I did my trip, which was great. But I came back and I got COVID, and that meant they also had to put off that colonoscopy. And again, it had to be pushed out 2 months because they don't have any other appointments. So, so it happened in January. So there we go. So what was going on is it was supposed to happen on Wednesday. And we were going to get the exact time of it on Monday. That's how they do it. They set up your day ahead of time, at least for this clinic. I don't know how it works everywhere, but for this clinic, what they do is they set up your day ahead of time, and then they actually tell you the time just a couple days ahead of time. So there we go. On Monday they called. They said, it's going to be, which one was that one going to be? Because it gets delayed. Anyway, it was going to be a really late appointment. Actually, it was going to be 4 o'clock. And which isn't great for me because you have to do this colon prep, and it has to be a certain number of hours ahead of time, and it's really awkward. So, but anyway, fine. It was what it was. So I started doing the prep. The weather was really bad. It was really bad on Mondays, on Monday, and it was supposed to snow again Wednesday. It might or might not have, or it might have turned to rain, or it might not snow at all, but on Monday, there had already been snow. And this is that cold front that's been going across the whole U.S. because it had already been cold for a couple of days, but it hadn't really snowed. But then on Monday, it had snowed. But when they called me with the appointment time on Wednesday, I even asked them, what are if it snows again, are you guys going to be open? And she said, we really try to stay open because we know that, people need their appointments. We know that people do the colon prep ahead of time, which isn't fun. In fact, it's the worst part of that whole process, actually, because the procedure they do with you out, so you don't even really notice it. And afterward, there's no uncomfort or anything, and you get to go home pretty much right away, and you can start eating again normally. Everything's great, once once you get that knockout gas or whatever it is. I think it's actually, I think it's through the IV that they actually knock you out. Maybe not, though, because they do put a mask on my mouth, too. So I'm not sure actually how the anesthesia works. But anyway, excuse me. So it was set for Wednesday. They assured me that they do everything they can to stay open. And then, of course, Tuesday afternoon, they call, they say, or was it Tuesday or was it Monday or was it Wednesday morning? No, it was Tuesday afternoon. They called me and they said, yeah, we just won't be able to do it. So we're going to have to push it back a day. And so they set up a schedule, another one for either 3 or 4 p.m. I think it was 3 p.m. Again, not great because I have to make a decision. So do I eat a little bit of food early, like right after they call me, and then go back to liquid diet? But that means I'm going to have to do extra prep work, which means, even more medicine, even more, running to the restroom. Or do I just stick to a clear liquid diet, which means like nothing but, broth with nothing in it, Gatorade, water. You can have Jell-O, and that's about it. And as long as the Jell-O is not red or purple. And I decided to kind of minimize the extra prep, and so I just stuck to the liquid diet. And I don't know if it was the right decision or not. It worked, but it wasn't fun because by then I had already been doing a liquid diet for a day, and now I had to do a second day of just liquid diet. So just broth, Jell-O, Gatorade, and water. That was basically it. I could have fruit juice, but with the Jell-O and the Gatorade, I didn't want to have any more sugar. So it was really not a lot of fun doing clear liquids and nothing else for 2 days in a row, and the extra prep, because I had already done all the prep by the time they called me, and now it's like, okay, well, now I have to do that. Now I have to do this extra prep. So my wife had to go get this extra laxative. It's a whole thing. I don't want to go into the gory details of that. Anyway, so next day happens, and they actually bumped it up, fortunately. So instead of being the afternoon, they actually bumped it to first thing in the morning. So I actually had to be there at 6 because it was a 7 o'clock It was a 7 o'clock colonoscopy, which means I check in at 6. There's a little bit of, paperwork. You go in, they strip you completely down. They have you stripped down completely, rather. No one's there when you're doing it. You put all your stuff in a bag. They lock the bag in a locked box. They give you the key. Sort of. And and then you just wait for the doctor. I could have had my phone with me, but it's like I was really tired because I had to do the prep, the special prep, and that had to do that a certain number of hours before, and that because of the early appointment now, instead of being like first thing in the morning, it had to be like at 1 a.m. at night. I even pushed it earlier, and I did it like right around midnight. Hoping that I could, hoping that the effects would, go through and be done, and then I could go get like 3-4 hours sleep. Well, I got like an hour's sleep because it took a long time for everything to finish. Eek, gross. Anyway, so I was really tired. I didn't ask for my phone. I just lie there and almost fell asleep, actually, even though I had an IV in my arm and I was on a, kind of an uncomfortable, surgical bed, basically, because they actually put you on a bed that then gets rolled in, and they actually do the thing right on the thing that you're lying on. They never move you again once you're naked and covered up with a warm blanket, and they put an IV in your arm. They're not going to move you to another bed. You're in the bed. They just roll the bed into the little office, into the little clinic thing. And so anyway, so they knock me out. I wake up. Turns out there were 3 small polyps, so not big, so that's good, and in only 1 year, so it's not great, but just 3 polyps, all very small. They took care of them, no problem. But and the good news is, instead of having to do it in 1 year, I can now wait 3 years. So it's 2024, so I'm going to have another one in 2027. Now, it's not as good as the 5 years that most people can go if they have a completely clean one, but it's a heck of a lot better than having to do one every year. So good. So in 3 years, I do another one. So, but something they mentioned that kind of perked up my ears, and that was the fact that they checked the old excise sites, where the old polyps were, based on the tattoos. And that was something that I hadn't been aware of before. So apparently when they had taken out the polyps the first time, the big ones, I think there was like those 2 big ones that I mentioned. There was kind of a middle-sized one, and then there were like 3 small ones like I had this time. For at least probably the big 2 and maybe the biggest 3, they actually, not only did they excise them, but then they put a tattoo there, which is interesting to me because, like, yes, it's so that they can know exactly where the old site was, and they can check it out and make sure, that it's that there's nothing wrong with that area also. But it seemed really strange to me that I have a tattoo, because I've never had a tattoo, never really wanted a tattoo. I was born in 1970, so in the 70s, when you see people with tattoos, they were like usually older people who had them for a few decades, and they're all like, their skin is stretched out, but also the ink is all blurred and faded and ran kind of, and it always looked like shit. Like, tattoos always looked like shit, especially back then. And over the years, I kind of saw how, like, clearly, like, the technology was getting better. Probably the inks were getting better. Probably the tattoo needles were getting better and stuff like that. The artists were getting more clever and stuff like that. And, there's probably, at some point, some sort of tattoo that I would be willing to put on my body. But I would be so paranoid about not liking the art, because I'm very picky about art. Like, I either like or don't like art. And if I ended up with a tattoo that I didn't like, I would be very unhappy about it. So it's not likely that I'm ever going to do that and have a tattoo. But as it turns out, I have tattoos. I just can't see them because they're in my colon. But that also brought up some interesting ideas for me, because, like, first of all, like, tattoos are normally a thing that, like, you are doing voluntarily. This was not voluntary. I had no idea they were even in there. Nor did they warn me ahead of time, hey, we might need to put a tattoo inside your colon. Is that okay? Which it doesn't bother me. But it did make me think, like, there are, like, religious people, I'm thinking specifically of Jewish people, who are not allowed to have tattoos. And does that count? Like, would they get in trouble if their doctor puts a colon tattoo, to mark the spot? I don't know. I'm assuming that because it's not on the exterior skin, and because it's medical, and because it's necessary, and because it's not really voluntary, it probably doesn't matter. But maybe it does. Maybe there's some extremely Orthodox Jewish people who would really actually balk at that. I don't know. But it feels weird to actually have a tattoo and not have asked for it. And to know that I have a tattoo. I can't show you where it is. Or at least you don't want me to. So, but yeah, it also made me think a lot about tattoos in general. Like, tattoos an interesting, like, even though I don't necessarily want one because of the art thing and, like, being very picky about art, I do understand the appeal of maybe having something that represents, something close to you, something, either a subject that you're very interested in, or represents a loved one, or whatever. I get that. And yeah, and I guess, but I guess that, not all tattoos have to be sort of visible. Like, you can sort of hold an idea in a way that's almost as, deep and permanent as a tattoo, but just in your mind. And that can just be, and you don't necessarily have to have it, out on your skin. And it can be internal, just not the way I got mine. So anyway, so that's internal tattoos. And as you could see, it got me thinking about a lot of things this week. So I hope you enjoyed hearing this. Between the colonoscopy being put off a day, which meant, like, I was fasting and feeling under, low energy earlier in the week, and then middle of the week, and then it got delayed. But then afterward, because of the, not so much because of the colonoscopy, but because of the sleep schedule being so thrown off. Like, I had literally spent 2 days in a row, because the first day I had also had to start the prep, like, really late after midnight. And so I didn't get to bed until like 4 a.m. that night either. So I had two nights in a row of, like, really funky, bad, low amounts of sleep. And getting back on track from that was really bad. And I just really didn't get any writing done. I did a little bit, very tiny bit, but it's just not nearly enough to actually do an episode. But I'm feeling better today. I've had 2 days in a row of pretty good sleep, and I'm starting to feel a little more normal today, which is great. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will do everything in my power to get back to the writing, and I do expect it to actually work this time, because I don't have anything weird scheduled this week or anything like that. So cross your fingers, I guess, but we should be able to get going on the story. And we're sort of getting to some important, and we're sort of getting to some climax sort of parts of the story. So I'm really looking forward to that. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter or Mastodon. And thanks for listening. Words and Music copyright 2024, Brandon Starr, all rights reserved. And characters and events don't appear in this episode. It's just me. Thanks for listening.